Welcome to this conversation brought to you by White House Custom Color. I'm Jed Toffer, and today I get to speak with one of my best friends ever in the whole wide world, Mr. Kevin Kubota. Hey, brother, how you doing?
I am so happy and honored to be here, Jed.
I tell people that you are the whole package.
Well, they're gonna wonder how you know that.
Here's what I mean by the whole package. You're a great speaker, like you're really good on stage. You got a great stage presence. You are a fantastic educator. You really know your stuff, and you know lots of stuff both behind the camera and in post and beyond. Business, the whole gamut. You actually are a really great photographer. Like, you know how to shoot, and do great post work. Yeah. It's not always there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you're an amazing dude. Like the big four, you got all of it. And so that's how I talk about you behind your back.
Ooh.
Just so you know. Now I'm doing it to your face.
That's quite an honor, brother. I appreciate that. I really do.
You deserve every bit of it. Your what you wanted to talk about was intriguing to me, because I know you, mostly, and I feel like I have. Let me put it this way: I feel like I have pretty good insight into your heart, like who you are and what you care about. Mm-hmm. And you, in my opinion, you really care about other people an awful lot more. Well, for one thing, an awful lot more than myself. just
I don't know. That's a whole other conversation. We can argue that one.
An awful lot more than most people that I come into contact with. Let me put it that way. Like, you really do care about people. It's genuine, you know, like, I think that you would be the same way whether anyone was around or not. And you have a tremendous amount of integrity, and I have a lot of admiration for that. And that comes through in your topic, which is ethical storytelling through photography. Mm-hmm. Talk about that for a second, just here at the beginning, so that or anyone listening has a good idea of what it is that you're referring to.
Well, I guess the topic idea came up as we were brainstorming, and one of the things that I started doing years ago was doing workshops. I mean, photography workshops, I've been doing those for a while. I mean, that's part of my shtick, but we started doing these other workshops that were charity workshops with purpose is what we called them. And so we go, third world countries, we take photographers, and we go for the pure purpose of donating our services. And one of the things that I started to learn that really impacted me was that we go over with one idea in our mind of how we're going to tell this story, how we're going to make the most powerful images that are going to win, people over, that's going to make them donate money, that's going to make them believe in this cause. And you get there, and sometimes the story isn't what you thought it was. And what do? Do you capture those images that you thought you were going to get and still put your imposed story on it? Or do you really capture what's going on and tell a truthful, possibly a more ethical story? And I think that's something that leaves a lot of room for discussion. Is ethical truthful? Is truthful ethical? Are they synonymous?
Are they always one and the same?
Are they always one and the same? Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah. And then when where's the line? When you want to be the best photographer, you want to do the best for your client. But does that mean crossing that ethical or truthful line in order to do a better job, maybe to do a service better?
Okay, I see. So you mean even back here, just in general with your clients?
Yeah.
Too.
Yes, it can be. It started me thinking about, how do I approach it with my clients and advertising? I think there's pretty obvious lines we all have as photographers. I've always said in my mind, well, if a cigarette company asked me to do an ad campaign for them, I would turn them down because I don't believe in promoting that. And I have no judgment about people who decide to smoke. But for me personally, that's not something I would want to help promote with my photography. So that's sort of like this pretty obvious ethical line that I wouldn't cross. But but that line becomes blurry when you start talking about, well, I'm going to go tell the story of needy children, but I'm going to portray them more needy than they really are. Or maybe I'm going to portray somebody who's not needy and say that they are needy, so that it's a
So
great image.
it
Yeah,
becomes an exploitation
an
of sorts.
exploitation in a sense,
Yeah.
but I think there's a blurry line because you can be somewhat truthful, or maybe your intention is truthful, or maybe you think it's truthful, but if you don't dig deeper and find out what is the real story of this person that I'm photographing, is the way I'm portraying them really truly the way it comes across in the image, is what everybody else sees the actual truth. Maybe I need to dig a little deeper. I think that's something to discuss too as photographers, is how deep do we dig before we present these images, or do we just put them out there, and say, well, everybody fend for yourself, what do you think?
Well, do you think it's fair to say, so this is coming to me right now, do you think it's fair to say that you can't paint with too broad a brush? I mean, is it case specific to some degree?
uh yeah, I think it case specific, context specific plays a lot into it.
Context specific. Yeah, maybe that's even what I'm trying to say better.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think if let's say, let's separate the example of, say, we're going to Thailand, and next Monday we're going to Thailand, and we're going
mhm,
to try to tell the story and help organizations to prevent child trafficking.
mhm,
All right, so let's take a hypothetical situation. Say we go and I see a kid standing on the side of the road, and maybe his mom is right there with them, and we get out of the van, and our translator says, "Oh, your kid's so cute. Can we take a picture of him?" And she agrees, and she even signs a model release.
mhm,
And then now we start taking pictures of this kid who's got mud on his face, his hands are dirty, maybe he just ate a chocolate bar, right? He's
mhm,
walking down the side of this rural street, and we photograph him. So all you see is this dirty face and an empty background, like he's dirty and all alone,
mhm.
right? And that's the image that we put out there. That's the image that we sell. That's the image we give to the organization, saying, here's an example of what children are going through
For your campaign.
for the campaign. And
Right.
they're like, wow, that's a perfect image. The child
Yeah.
looks so needy.
Mhm,
Like, that's really going to be a heart tugging image. And
mhm.
yet the reality is he just had a dirty face because he was playing in the mud, and his parents standing right there outside of the frame. And he's not an orphan. He's not needy. He's not dirty. He just
Right.
looks at it at that moment. So
Right.
is that ethical for us then to use that image when it's being helped? It's used to help other people. It's used to help a cause. It's not necessarily exploiting him, but it could be if he's recognized. People think, oh, this poor kid, when he really isn't in that situation. You know what I mean?
Right. So do the ends justify the means in that scenario?
Right.
Right.
Right. And sometimes I think photographers, a lot of times we go and we say, well, it's a powerful image. It's helping our cause. It's not hurting the kid. It's not, putting him in a degrading. Well, that's I guess that's debatable too, but
Maybe it is, right?
maybe it is degrading. But
Mhm.
they signed off on this release. They knew what we were doing. Um, so is it okay? It's helping my cause. It's helping their cause. We could justify that, in a sense, any money that we raise is going back to their village, to their people. So
Ha-
does that
ha-
justify it?
have you run into like in your travels and in your endeavors? Is this something that is a thing often? I mean, is it for for you or for everybody? I mean, is it something you guys discuss?
Yeah, it is something we discuss because it does happen quite a bit that we take images that may be out of context,
Mm-hmm.
but they're amazing images. They're powerful images, and the organization wants to use them, and we've already signed everything off to them and
Mm-hmm.
agreed to give them all the photos. And
Mm-hmm.
even in organizations, sometimes the images go down the line through, okay, now it goes to the marketing manager who gives it to the
Right.
whoever person, and they don't even know where this
They'd have
came.
no
They
idea.
have no idea what the
No.
context of this photo, but they say, oh,
No.
that's a great image. Let's throw that with
Right.
our child trafficking ad, when the kid may have nothing to do with child trafficking. They weren't trafficked.
How is it any different from advertising in general?
It's it's not really.
So I'm just asking. I mean,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But with there's an objective there when
Mhm.
you're advertising something where whether you're trying to sell it or whether you're just trying to put it out there for people to know about it and give it exposure.
Yeah.
But it sounds to me like it's no different in that way. But are there just certain stances where you feel maybe some sort of conviction because of what the subject matter is?
Yes. And I get, well, I'm thinking about the difference between advertising and say a situation like this, which in a sense is advertising, but I guess
In a
the
sense.
way that we separate it in our minds is I think most people inherently know that most advertising is bullshit,
Right.
right? We know those models
Yes.
don't look like that. We know they've been
Yes.
photoshopped to death in those ads. We know that they are hiring people to say stuff for them that
Right.
absolutely is not true.
Mhm.
And we know that, and yet we still fall for the
Right.
ads. No
Yeah, you're
matter,
still like, "Oh, I still want
I
that
still want
cheeseburger."
that because they use
Yeah.
Jed as their spokesperson, and I love
Yeah.
Jed, so I'm just going to get that. And Jed didn't even know he endorsed this product, probably.
No, no. It is interesting though because I do see the parallels. But for me, that's why I think I wouldn't be able to paint it with a broad brush because I think it would come down to what it was, who was involved,
Hmm.
what was the end game, right? Who's the audience, the target audience? I think I would ask myself those questions.
Right.
Maybe, like for what you're doing specifically, on one hand, it would mean an awful lot more to me that it was legit and authentic. And on the other hand, because what you're doing is so important, I think to myself, I might be like, you know what? We just need to get the best content we can
Right.
for this. Because what we're doing is such a big deal. We're not trying to sell shoes or hair product. We're
Mhm.
trying to save people's lives
Yeah.
and kids' lives. So it's like if this image works and this kid happened to come from an upper class family and that's chocolate on his face from a Hershey bar that he just ate rather than a bunch of mud, then so be it.
Hmm.
Right? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I'm split.
Yeah.
And I think I would be split every time.
Yeah. Well, let's turn it like from the consumer. Say you open up those letters in the mail, right? That's asking for donations, and you read this letter, and you're like, I'm not moved by this. I donate so much already. I don't know if I can donate more money. And then you flip the letter over, and on the back, there's this picture of this kid that just tugs at your heartstrings. It just
Yep.
moves you to tears, and you're like, dang it! If I can help that kid,
Yep.
I'm in. And
That's what
so,
I mean.
and you donate, and then you to find out later, the news comes out next week. All the photos were just stock photos. They didn't come from anything that they were working out. This organization's blown, but they're
Uh,
still doing it. They're still donating the money, but they've just realized that they're not ethically raising for their cause. Now, how would you feel? Would you feel like I've been
as the
taken?
consumer,
Yeah.
probably.
Or would you be like, well, you know what? I gave money to a good cause. I don't care if I was coerced into it.
You probably just described my first and then my second thought.
Uh
So my first thought would be like, "What? Seriously?"
huh. Yeah.
And then my second thought would be, "Hey, you know what? It is a good cause." Right? Like,
Uh-huh.
because at that point, I think the thing that would raise a red flag to me and that I would think to myself, if they're shady on the front end, I'll use that term for
Mhm.
lack of a better one. If they're shady on the front end, what's going on the back end? Is my money being used 87% of it for administration costs,
Right.
whatever that means?
Right.
I think that again, this is just coming to me now as I go through this scenario, but I think that would happen.
Uh huh.
But I would probably be in a position where I would think to myself, especially depending on how much I donated. But I would probably be in a position where I'd be like, it's still a good cause.
Hmm.
Hopefully they're using the money Well,
proper.
and if it's not that kid that gets it, it's another kid that really needed it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And yes, I agree. And I think I would go through the same process. And yet there are people, and we know from lawsuits that happen all the time, that don't quite think it through that way. You would feel completely taken and misled and would say, I'm going to file a class action suit because I was misled. And that's where their focus goes. So,
So, would your advice in general be for people that are involved in creating and providing content to just be as legit as you can be?
yeah, in this context, in the context of especially the charity, the nonprofit realm, I think
Yeah.
it is important that we as photographers try to be as legit as we can be, and to convince the organizations that we're working with that the images should be used. Make sure we give them enough information about the image and the context on which it was taken, under the circumstances, and provide that information. So we're encouraging them to use the images responsibly as well. I mean, you can't control it. Obviously, they're going
No,
to do
at some point when it's out of your hands,
it's out of your hands,
it's
right?
just out of your hands, right?
Yeah, but I think we do have a responsibility to capture those powerful images and to give them the proper context, and and know that if you don't, that it could be used in the wrong context, and either be okay with that. And I'm not here to judge anyone to say you should or shouldn't. Some people may say, hey, it's powerful images. If they can use it, they can use it. I don't care what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's up to you to decide. But to be clear, at least to think about it, I think is important for photographers.
So transition it back. So what I'm hearing you say is you think it's important for professional photographers when they're working with somebody in this context to encourage authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Is that that's my summary?
Authenticity, and doing all that you can do to provide the proper context. And that could be
Context, yes.
as simple as putting the proper description in the metadata of your
Mm-hmm.
files when you
Mm-hmm.
when you're processing them. I put information, the model information, the metadata about where it was taken, and all that
Mm-hmm.
in the file, so that
Right.
it stays with the image, and they have the
Yep.
choice to look at this or not.
Yep.
And sometimes that's all you can do. But if you do nothing with it, if you just put your copyright, your name in there and send it off to the world, then who knows what it's going to be used for?
So there's a due diligence there.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So can now switch it to the home front, so to
Yes.
speak, and what
Yes.
we're doing. Talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
more.
So I guess this whole process over the years started me thinking more about um, how ethically, how accurately I portray even advertising and my clients, portrait clients. And I know that's a really sticky one for a lot of people. A lot of people who are all about, retouch the hell out of them, and it's
Mm-hmm.
the more,
Yeah.
the better they look, the more they're going to buy.
Right.
And other people are like, yeah, maybe I'll do a little retouching, but not too much because I want them to look real.
Right.
And I guess you'll have clients for both, so you kind
Mm-hmm.
of have to decide where you're going to fit in. But years ago, when I was shooting a lot of weddings, I sort of made a conscious decision to not over retouch my images. And I would have I didn't have clients who said I look fake in my photos. It was always I look very real, very, very natural. And sometimes they'd ask for more retouching, in which cases I would. But I made an effort to kind of to hold back a little bit from over retouching photos, so that I didn't portray them in a false light.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, and sometimes too, it's not just the false light that's the issue. I get what you're saying, but it's also over retouching can just flat out be bad retouching.
yeah. Well, there's that too. Yeah.
Where the catch lights are laser beams coming out of their eyes, and they start to look like an X-Men, and you're like, what is that person going to shoot me?
Yeah.
And
They've
their
been
skin's
abducted
made out
by
of plastic.
aliens.
Yeah, it's so I get what you're saying though. On the other hand,
Uh-huh.
I think I still want to go back to the case by case basis. At one point, we had a client that where the mom wanted all these photos done of her kids. She didn't want to be in the photos,
Mm.
and of course, we do what we can to encourage the parents to be in the photos as well. So we coaxed her, and she said yes. She relented. Um, and I knew who this was, and she had a larger nose, right? And she's self conscious about her nose.
Yeah.
That's all it came down to. So I took the liberty in post to just use the pinch tool and the
Yeah.
liquefy move tool a little bit here and there, ever so slightly, right? I didn't like shrink her nose down to anything, but she came in and saw the images, and you know what? Maybe this is a confession. I didn't tell her.
Uh-huh.
I don't even know if I told Vicky. And she said these are the best images that anyone has ever taken of me, and she just bought and bought and bought and was crying and was madly in love with them, and I never told her.
Uh-huh.
She doesn't know to this day.
Now she
And
does.
there's well, I'm not, definitely not going to say names, but and I've done that with other things, with other people in other situations,
Yes.
ever so slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like your retouching philosophy, which I think in general is our retouching philosophy. We do have a product that is over retouched. It's more of a painterly without being painterly type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, I don't want someone to look like they're made out of plastic,
Yeah.
you know? So
But
just a
it's funny
little
that
bit.
people still want that. I mean, I can't say that I don't want to look better in photos than I do in real life. It's that funny thing with our egos that
I just want to look thinner. I don't. I mean,
you know,
I am not afraid to take 50 pounds off of myself in a second.
there is an actual Photoshop tool you could use for that.
Yeah, I don't even think twice when it comes to presenting myself ethically
Yeah.
or not.
Yeah.
I'm extremely unethical when it comes to what I look like and what I do to
Yeah.
myself
Yeah.
in the digital realm.
So
So,
that's a good point, for both of us is, like I think my face is crooked sometimes, but so I'll try to push one eye up or something. No, I actually don't.
you,
I
you
try
do
not to try
Picasso?
not to look at pictures of myself too often. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well,
Um,
I get it.
but it's such an interesting concept of our egos, our personal egos, and you know why we want to portray ourselves differently than we really are. Why is that? And are we have we contributed to that as photographers, creating images that are always or usually portraying people in a light that you might glimpse for a split second. If out of the corner of your eye you look at somebody, they look that way, but if you actually stood and stared at their face, they don't look that way. So are we saying, well, we're realistic because we caught what they would have seen in the glimpse if they'd squinted their eyes and we shook their head back and forth?
Mm-hmm,
They would have looked this beautiful in real life,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so we captured that. We sliced that time down and caught that. So is that okay as photographers? And why? How did it get to this point where we can't be comfortable just portraying ourselves exactly as we are?
Well, what else could it be but vanity?
Yeah,
I'm asking, really. I
vanity
hadn't
and ego.
right. Like it's pride,
Yeah,
essentially, right?
yeah,
And so are we complicit in that? Are we complicit? Are we inherently complicit in spreading and inflating that vanity, pride, ego?
mm-hmm.
I mean, look through Facebook for a second. Look through your Instagram feed for a second and see what people are posting. And yes, the vast majority of what people post, their subjects look fantastic.
Yeah,
But a lot of them have had an awful lot of work done to the images,
yes,
and maybe we're saying, is that always a good thing, or can that be a good thing, or what if it's not?
right. Well, I think that's powerful what you said. Are we complicit? did we even start the whole thing? You know, as photographers for advertising, going way back to the
Hmm.
whatever 30s, 40s, 50s, whenever photography started, photography was what was the tool
Hmm.
that advertising used to make people look better than they really were, to make a product look better, to make a scene look better, to make a place, a hotel that you're trying to sell people on look better than it is when you walk in and look at it with your own eyes. You know, how many times have you seen pictures of a Airbnb or a hotel and you're like, God, that looks like an amazing place, and you walk in and you're just kind of like, oh, all right, well, it's nice, but it's nothing like the picture. I mean, how often has that been said over and over and over? Oh, it's nothing like the pictures, you know?
Read the what Orbitz reviews or the Yelp reviews, and you can see
Yeah.
that didn't look anything like it did on the website,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
that sand was actually dirt or rocks, or there's no white sandy beach there. That's actually happened to me,
Yeah.
incidentally.
Or there's a picture of a
So
white sandy beach that's about 8 feet wide, and that's all you get, you know. But that's what you believe is the entire beach all of a sudden.
right, right, or there's a picture of a white sandy beach and it happens to be a mile and a half away
Yeah, it's
because you're
not even in
inland.
the property. Yeah, so I mean, in a sense, we as photographers started the whole thing, you know, or we gave fuel to that fire anyway.
Yeah, certainly that. Yes.
Yeah,
No question. Lots of fuel to that fire is, I guess, is what I'm insinuating. And so I so what do you do? I mean, is it essentially it's on everybody to kind of, its beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's a lot of it's subjective anyway, or are there lines that can be drawn? And if so, who draws them and who decides where they get drawn? I mean, what do you do?
yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great question that I don't know that I have the answer to, but it does make me think about like something you just said about who decides where the line is. I think is a great discussion for just ethics in general.
Hmm.
Like
I agree
who
with you.
who decides what's ethical? What's ethical for you, for Jed, may not be ethical for me.
Hmm.
You know, and where do we get that? Is that
Hmm.
because of your parents or your church upbringing or your family, or is that something you just came from reading a very special book? All of a sudden, decided, oh, this is the way I'm going to live my life.
Right.
You know, and
Like even earlier when you were talking about not photographing cigarettes for a cigarette ad campaign or whatever,
mhm,
and you said I'm not going to do that because it's not ethical.
mhm,
Well, it's not ethical for you,
right.
but there's a lot of people who like to smoke.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who like to smoke who believe it does nothing bad for your health or the environment, and
Right.
who am I to say that I'm right and they're wrong?
Right.
I mean,
Right. Right.
as much as I don't like it, I do respect their right to choose and to decide for themselves, and to come up with their own ethics, which is hard because we're always judging people through our own filters, right? I mean,
Yes, every
I'm
time.
judging your ethics, even though I'm trying to be fair
Hmm.
about it. I'm still judging
Hmm.
it through my filter, and you're judging
Yeah,
mine through your filter, and the rest of the world the same way.
it's not going to come out well for me if you're judging my ethics. I promise you.
No. Uh, I know some of your deep dark secrets, and I still love you. So,
I know, I know it. That's why you're such a good man. I tell you what, I'm probably going to be thinking about this on and off for quite some time. Maybe I have more questions for myself now than I did before we even started the conversation. And yet I think to myself, maybe that's the point of the conversation.
yeah, I think that would be the biggest takeaway for me is that this conversation got people thinking,
Hmm.
thinking about
Right.
where they get their ethics from.
Hmm.
I think is really important that we self-examine, that we look at our own lives, our own thoughts, our own beliefs, and think about where we got them from. Do they make
Hmm.
sense
Hmm.
where we got them from? And then how am I applying that? Whatever I decide is true for me, how am I applying that in all
Right.
aspects of my life, my work, my
Right.
photography, my relationships, everything, you know?
I like it.
So
Well, now I'm thinking about it even more. Hi, talk a little bit more as we wrap up here about what's going on Monday.
Monday, we are jumping on a plane to Thailand, and I take on a group of photographers, me and my good buddy Benjamin Edwards, who you know as well, who's a giant heartfelt photographer and a wonderful person,
individual,
outstanding person, and we've been good friends for a long time and work on these workshops together. So we're taking a small group with us to Bangkok and then to Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai, and we're going to work with an organization called the Freedom Story and the Hug Project, and they both work independently but together as well to help raise awareness and prevention for child trafficking in Thailand.
And you do these once or twice a year? Is that fair to say?
It's been about once a year for these workshops. About all we can. There are a lot of work to put together, so about once a year.
Big deal, right?
Yeah. And we've done Kenya in the past and Bolivia, and this is our third one to Thailand. And we're looking at maybe India or Nepal. Maybe you guys could come to Nepal next time.
My wife would probably just take off. I wouldn't even.
Yeah.
She just left. Tell you. Nope. Yep. Had to go see Nepal. Had to go see about Nepal.
Yeah.
Hey, where do people go to find more information?
If you could go to my blog, Kevin Kubota, Kubota blog.com, and that has links to everything. I have a business website, KubotaImageTools.com, and then Workshops with Purpose is on Facebook. That's our main sort of hangout there. All right. So if you just search for Workshops with Purpose on Facebook, you'll find our page there, and we'd love to hear. I'd love to hear stories from other photographers who are thinking about their own ethics and what it means to be a photographer. And if you're maybe you're not even thinking about it, you're like, just photography is my business and that's what I do, and that's fine too, But to hear those stories from you guys would be great. And also, if anybody's interested in doing something wonderful with their photography in a nonprofit way, may join us on one of our groups next time.
Fantastic. I'd say, did you have bacon today? That's my last question.
Yeah, I didn't, because I was afraid that the bacon breath would come across in some way in this interview, and I was just so worried about that I held off.
Come on, man.
But I'm having it for lunch. I can tell you that much.
Good for you. Good for you.
A day without bacon is like a day without sunshine.
No doubt. That's a really good analogy. I'm going to use that from now on. Hey, it was terrific to see you and talk with you. As always, I look forward to our next meal together and beyond.
Yes, sir. My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Say hi to your lovely family from me.
All right. Love you, bud.
I love you too, brother.